Good evening, Canterbury. Welcome to NewsMakers, where we debate the stories that shaped the week. It's a pleasure to introduce our panel, the Mayor of the Hurunui District, Garry Jackson, from the Council of Social Services, Sharon Torstonson, and Christchurch City Councillor, Yani Johanson. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, Mike.
Power to the people. A major public rally is set down for Auckland tomorrow. This is the March for Democracy, and there are predictions that 40,000 people are going to swallow up Queen Street tomorrow. The organisers of the march are campaigning for referendums to be made binding, and we could actually have a referendum on a referendum. However, the government is being advised that they should block any attempt to make future referenda binding. What do we think? Garry?
Well, you've almost caught me off guard with it, Mike, because I'm not particularly sure I'm right up to speed with it. I think there is some merit in what they're asking on major issues such as this. I think there is clearly a responsibility on central government to listen. Whether or not we should take this and extend the principle so that all of governance is based around referendum, I'm not sure. Because equally, we elect people to lead and make the right decisions given all of the circumstances. So I guess I'm a bit torn between it, but I think in this case, given the issues over, particularly, I guess, the anti-smacking law and the referendum around that, I think there's probably some merit to see this through a bit further. Sure.
Should the will of the people always prevail, Sharon?
I guess it depends how it's expressed. Like Garry, I'm a big fan of local democracy. It's why I'm such a big fan of the Local Government Act, because it does give power to our local citizens. That said, the referendum system is, as I said, a blunt instrument. I can't see how it can capture the complexities and the nuances of issues that government is required to weigh up and balance. The difficulties in framing the questions, for a start. You look at the things we've had, like the smacking referendum, the victims' rights referendum. That one in particular had about 4 questions and 1 in it, and to try and figure out what you were saying yes and no to reduce something down to a yes-no question when there are so many complex issues to look at is really just oversimplifying things.
Yani, what about for you? I mean, people like Mike Moore say the people are always right. Even when they're wrong, they are right. Do you think he's right?
No. I think there is a huge issue with citizens-initiated referenda. I think we not only need to look at the anti-smacking referendum that was held and to see, as has Sharon pointed out, the concern around how the question is asked and what sort of result you get. And the problem I have with these referendum is often it will come down to who can afford to spend the most money on the most propaganda to influence the public's view. People elect local people to make decisions on their behalf, and I think people have to have confidence that when they're voting for people to make decisions, they respect that those people are going to do that and do that job well. If they don't like that, obviously they can turf them out. I can, however, understand people's continued frustration at what is the perception of the lack of listening. And if you look at our council, a number of submissions processes we've been through, such as the School of Music, the community funding cuts, the Edgware poll, where the overwhelming number of people said, bad idea, please don't do it, we still went ahead anyway. And I do understand why people are getting frustrated.
We will touch on the conservatorium in detail a little later on in the program. This is interesting because consultation in itself seems to be a very subjective term as to what it actually is meant to lead to. Is it purely just a listening exercise, or is an elected body, like a council, obliged to heed the currents of public feeling that come through from that consultation? How do you see it?
I think, Mike, the key responsibility for council is to listen and draw in that input and use that input to make the right decision.
If 80% of people say no to a particular idea...
Let me put it to you this way, Mike. In my clear view, and from what I've come to experience over the last 5 years, consultation is about the quality of the feedback and using that feedback to shape the right decision. It is not decision-making by numbers.
Right.
And that's where the confusion often lies in the consultation.
Would you agree with that?
Well, if you look at our council, I'd have to say there's no way I agree with that, because we've had awesome quality of submissions, of people being constructive. They get labelled as critics, but they're some of the most constructive citizens we have in the city, giving us good advice. and we simply haven't changed our proposals from what we started with. So it's very hard to argue that, in fact, that consultation has been of any benefit whatsoever.
It's a balance. It's a trade-off. Don't misread what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's both the numbers of submitters, if you like, or the feedback in numerical terms, and it's the quality and the input that it gives you. So
right.
it's a combination of both, is
Sharon,
what I think needs to be used.
Yeah, obviously you've been through this front and centre with social housing.
Yep.
What's your perception of consultation and what should it mean?
I think consultation is one tool in the democratic toolkit. What I would like to see more of, that we don't see happening a lot, is bringing the opposing camps together and trying to facilitate consensus. We're not always going to get it, but instead we have this kind of contest of ideas to the authority that's going to come down with the final decision, rather than engaging the citizens and trying to come up with a solution themselves. I'd really like to see a bit more of that happening, where we can bring diverse interests and views in our communities together and facilitate some kind of understanding of each other's positions and looking for some way forward together.
All right. Before we go to the break, we'll have a quick look at ECAN, speaking of local bodies, because they remain firmly in the gun, and the government's appointed review teams have swung into action, prodding and poking their way around ECAN. Do you support this examination, and what do you think it will lead to? Garry?
I wondered if you were going to start with me or finish with me, given that as one of Canterbury's mayors, I guess I have to say I am responsible partly for what is happening right now.
Yeah.
And as a council and on behalf of our people that I advocate for, we don't back away from that. There are issues in there that we have seen over a long period of time, and for a variety of reasons, quite frankly, the mayors of Canterbury felt that there was no other way but to get an external review, and that's what that's what's happened.
So even with the leadership change, that hasn't addressed the totality of issues.
I have to say that in the communication I have had with Alec Neil in the last, what it would be, 6 weeks since his appointment,
Yeah.
the level and the quality of communication and the way in which he's listening has been outstanding. But as the chair of Environment Canterbury, given its political makeup and the other, what I would say are structural and cultural issues maybe within that organisation, and I mean it with respect to the people in there,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about the processes and the systems, there is a lot of work that needs to be done to turn it around, in my opinion. And I welcome the review, and hopefully something will come out of it.
Okay.
It's not an indictment on Alec himself.
I've got to go to the break, but just a very quick Nostradamus moment. In 5 years' time, will ECAN be with us as we know it?
Well, I think a lot depends on what happens at a central government level. I think there's no doubt that there will be changes. But can I just say, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the other councils. As a city councillor, I think it was completely underhanded for our mayor to write to ECAN with a number of concerns that the council had without even sending the letter to the council or bringing it to the council to make a formal comment. In fact, as a city councillor, I knew nothing about the mayor's concerns on behalf of our organisation, and I believe it was completely inappropriate.
Will ECAN be here in 5 years?
I hope it will be. I think we need an environmental safeguard and checks and balances that ECAN provide.
Will ECAN be here in 5 years?
A body will be here in 5 years. Whether it's in its current configuration, it would be difficult to say.
Would that be your hunch? It'll be a watered-down version?
I won't say watered down, I think it may be in a different version.
And you could ask the question, would our council be here in 5 years? And a number of concerns that the mayors have raised, Mike, I might add, have been exactly the same concerns that people have raised against our city council.
All right. We'll take a break. Coming up, we're going to look at the Conservatorium issue and also ACC and all that highway thunder this week. Do stay with us.